All right, welcome in everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into the rules of life. We've got a whole stack of Richard Templar's books here,
Yeah, a whole bunch.
and we're not just going to list them out though, right? We're going to really try and unpack
Yeah.
why they work, how they all kind of connect, and what they could mean for you out there listening.
What I think is really cool about how Templar approaches this is it's not just like do this and do that. He gets into like the psychology behind it
Oh yeah.
and builds this framework for like better relationships, a stronger family life, and even like how your work impacts the world. Big picture stuff.
So it's not like a to-do list.
No,
It's more like, how do I live with more intention?
exactly. And what's so interesting is how they all connect. Like, one rule might be about saying sorry first in a relationship.
Okay.
But then he talks about knowing when to just listen instead of trying to fix things and keeping those lines of communication open. And those three things, they build on each other,
Yeah.
like a foundation for dealing with conflict in a healthy way.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into those partnership rules then. Rule 26 is be the first to say sorry. Templar says strong people aren't afraid to apologize even if they think they're right. Have you ever had that? Like, someone apologizes and even if you felt wronged,
Totally.
it just diffuses everything.
Oh, absolutely. There's tons of research on conflict resolution that backs that up. That taking responsibility, even if you don't feel totally at fault, it can de-escalate a situation like that.
Oh, wow.
It's like you're acknowledging the other person's feelings, but you're not saying you're wrong.
It's like saying, hey, I see you're hurting and I care about that even if we disagree on what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And that ties right into Rule 27, which I think is really interesting. Knowing when to listen versus act.
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Even Templar says it's tough for him because he's a problem solver by nature. But sometimes what your partner really needs is just to be heard, not to have you try and fix things.
I can see that being tough. It's so
Oh.
tempting to just jump in with solutions.
Yeah. It is. And that takes emotional intelligence. It's not just listening, it's recognizing what kind of support the other person needs.
So are they looking for solutions? Validation, advice, or just a safe space to vent? I've
Exactly.
got to ask, have you ever been in a situation where you just needed to vent, but the other person kept interrupting with advice? How'd that make you feel?
Ugh, I think we've all been there. It's like they don't take your feelings seriously. The irony is they're trying to help,
Right.
but they end up making things worse.
Because in that moment, all you want is to be understood,
Yes,
not given a to-do list.
exactly. And that's where Rule 28 comes in. Keep talking. Templar's big on open and honest communication. Not just to solve problems, but to build that intimacy and avoid misunderstandings down the line. And it's not just about talking, it's about showing you're listening to, even in small ways.
He talks about nodding your head, saying, making eye contact, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's like saying, I'm here with you in this moment, in this conversation.
And those little signals, they can make a huge difference. Build trust and connection over time.
Then he throws in Rule 29, respect privacy. Kind of counterintuitive after all that talk about being open, right?
I know. It seems like a contradiction, but he uses this example of separate bathrooms.
Oh, okay.
Might seem kind of funny, but it gets at the need for personal space.
Even in a relationship.
Right. Even in a relationship, you need that autonomy.
So it's not about keeping secrets. It's about recognizing everyone needs their own time and space to recharge.
Precisely. Keeps the relationship from getting too enmeshed.
Okay, this next rule, this can be a big one, especially if you don't talk about it early on. Rule 30, check that you have the same shared goals. It's easy to assume you're on the same page, but Templar's saying, don't do that.
Yeah, big mistake.
Have those open and honest talks about what you each want in the future.
Otherwise, you could be building a life together, and then 10 years down the road, you realize you have totally different visions.
Oh,
Whether it's careers, money, family, or just how you want to live, those misalignments can lead to a lot of resentment.
so have you ever actually sat down with your partner and had that conversation? Not just casual someday dreams, but like the nitty-gritty details.
It's something I tell all couples to do, even if they think they're totally in sync. You might be surprised by what comes up.
Yeah, better to address those potential problems early on.
Absolutely.
Okay, this next rule is one of my favorites. Rule 31, treat your partner better than your best friend. He gives this hilarious example of how we react when a friend makes a driving mistake versus when our partner does.
Oh, I know,
With
right?
a friend, you laugh it off, but with your partner,
Not so much.
not so much.
It's true. We're often way more understanding with friends. It's like all those little grievances with our partners just build up over time.
And we take them for granted because we think they'll always be there.
which is a dangerous assumption. Relationships need constant attention. So what can we do about this? It takes effort,
Hmm.
appreciation, and remembering why you fell in love in the first place.
Choose to treat them with the same kindness and respect that you give everyone else.
Small gestures, words of affirmation, just being mindful of how you talk to them. It all makes a difference.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, from apologies to shared goals, but we're just getting started. Next up, we're moving into Templar's rules for family and friends.
This is where we see those individual rules start to connect to something bigger, how they fit into building meaningful relationships.
And how they play a part in a life that feels, truly impactful.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting. Stick with us. We'll be back in a minute with more of Richard Templar's Rules of Life.
Welcome back to the deep dive. All right, so we've explored these really insightful rules about relationships, but now Templar takes us into the world of family and friends. He kicks things off with Rule 32. Never be too busy for loved ones. He even admits to messing this one up himself, forgetting to call his brothers and stuff. It's so easy to let those connections slip away.
It is, especially when life gets hectic. We tend to think, oh, I'll catch up later, but then later never comes.
Yeah, later turns into weeks, then months, sometimes even years.
Exactly. And then we're left with that regret thinking, why didn't I make more of an effort?
And it doesn't have to be these grand gestures. A quick phone call, a text, even just a little note saying, hey, thinking of you.
Right. Those small things go a long way.
Okay, so it's not just about maintaining those relationships. It's also about how we approach our kids. Rule 33 is give your kids a break. And he tells this story about a girl who's dead set on being a ballerina.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
But she's clearly not built for it, right?
Yeah.
But instead of trying to talk her out of it, her parents support her.
Which is tough, because as a parent, you want to protect your kids from disappointment.
Right, but they let her figure it out on her own.
And that's such an important lesson for parents. It's about supporting their dreams, even the ones that seem a little far-fetched.
Even if it means watching them potentially fall flat on their face.
Because sometimes those are the experiences that teach them the most valuable lesson.
It builds resilience,
Absolutely. It's about trusting them to find their own path, even if it takes a few detours along the way.
Okay, now this next rule, this one hits close to home for a lot of people, I think. Rule 34 is never lend money unless you're prepared to write it off.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is, but Templar's point is, it's not about being heartless. It's about protecting yourself and the relationship.
He uses that analogy of Oscar Wilde lending a book to a friend.
And never getting that.
Exactly. And it's the same with money. It changes the dynamic, creates this weird power imbalance.
Yeah, and if the money doesn't come back, it can breed so much resentment.
It's like a recipe for disaster, especially with family and friends.
So what's the alternative? How do you help someone financially without jeopardizing the relationship?
Templar suggests looking for other ways to support them, maybe helping them create a budget, connecting them with resources, offering practical help instead of cash.
It's about finding ways to be there for them without putting the relationship on the line.
Exactly.
Okay, this next rule, Rule 35, it's there are no bad children. And Templar actually used to hate that saying.
Oh, yeah, he talks about that.
They're a good kid who did a bad thing.
Right.
But he's come around to it.
Yeah, because it's about recognizing that kids aren't inherently bad, even when they make bad choices.
It's about separating the behavior from the person.
It's like you can address the action without labeling the child as bad. That creates a more positive environment for growth, don't you think?
It does. It's about seeing their potential, even when they're messing up.
Yeah.
And remembering that they're still learning, still figuring things out.
Exactly. It goes back to that idea of giving them a break, allowing them to make mistakes and learn from them without feeling judged.
Okay, this next rule is all about bringing the right energy to your relationships. Rule 36, be up around the people you love.
Love this one.
Me too. And he tells this great story about a friend who lived abroad and realized he was happier there because he didn't know the words for negative emotions in the local language.
Oh, that's fascinating. It's like our language can actually shape our feelings.
It can, so it's not about denying your own struggles. It's about choosing to focus on the positive.
For your own well-being, but also for the people around you, because our energy is contagious.
It is. And by choosing to be that positive force, we create a more uplifting atmosphere for everyone.
It's like a ripple effect, spreading that good energy outward.
All right, so we've talked about relationships with partners, kids, friends, but Templar doesn't stop there. He goes even wider, talking about our role in society and the impact we have on the world around us.
This is where it starts to feel really big picture, connecting those individual rules to something much larger than ourselves.
Yeah, it's about moving beyond me and into we territory.
And that's where things get really interesting. Stay tuned, because we'll be right back to explore those rules for society, work, and the world beyond.
Welcome back to the deep dive. All right, so we've moved from those personal relationships out to the wider world now. And Templar kicks off this section with Rule 40. We're all closer than you think. And he illustrates it with this story about a guy who finds out his dad was actually a foreigner, which totally shakes up his whole sense of identity.
Yeah, it's a great example of how we make assumptions about people based on how they look or where they live.
But underneath it all, we're more alike than we realize.
Exactly. We share these fundamental human experiences, regardless of our backgrounds or beliefs. Joy, sorrow, love, loss. It's all part of being human, you know?
It's like that saying, walk a mile in someone else's shoes. But it's more than just empathy, right?
Sure.
It's recognizing that we're all connected.
It is. And that leads us to forgiveness, which is Rule 41. It doesn't hurt to forgive. Templar gets at its heart, especially when you've been hurt.
Oh yeah, it can be incredibly difficult.
But he says it's ultimately for your own benefit.
It's not about saying what happened was okay. It's about letting go of that anger and resentment so you can move on.
It's like freeing yourself from the past.
And sometimes it's a process, not a one-time thing, right?
Yeah.
You might have to choose forgiveness over and over again.
That's true. It can take time, and it often requires you to see things from the other person's perspective.
Try to understand their motivations, even if you don't agree with their actions.
Right, recognizing their humanity even when they've messed up.
So from forgiveness, Templar shifts to something that seems pretty basic. Rule 42, it doesn't hurt to be helpful. He uses this simple example of helping someone with their groceries, but I think it goes deeper than that.
Oh, absolutely. It's about cultivating this mindset of generosity and compassion, realizing we're all in this together.
And it doesn't have to be some big heroic act. Just those little everyday things like holding a door open, offering to help someone carry something.
Those small acts of kindness can make a huge difference in someone's day.
All right, let's move on to rules for work now. And Templar starts with one that might surprise some people. Rule 43, be generous with your time and information. He's challenging that whole knowledge is power idea, right?
Yeah, he's saying that hoarding information actually holds you back. It's much more beneficial to share what you know, to mentor others, to create a collaborative environment.
It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Exactly. When we share our knowledge, everyone benefits. We learn from each other, we grow together, and we achieve more as a team.
Okay, so from generosity, we move to integrity with Rule 44. Keep the moral high ground. This can be tough, especially in a competitive workplace.
Oh, I know. It's easy to get caught up in the pressure to succeed, sometimes at any cost.
But Templar's saying it's more important to do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when no one's watching.
It's about building a reputation for honesty and trustworthiness. Those qualities will take you further in the long run than any shortcut or shady tactic.
And then he gets really thought-provoking with Rule 45. Look at the long-term ramifications of what you do for a living. He talks about how he started thinking about the environmental impact of his writing, of all things.
It's about taking a step back and asking yourself, what's the bigger picture here? How does my work impact the world, not just today, but in the years to come?
It's like taking responsibility for the consequences of your actions, even the unintended ones.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean you have to quit your job and become an activist, but it's about being mindful, making choices that align with your values, and using your skills to make a positive impact whenever possible.
So now we get to this cluster of rules that feel almost like a personal manifesto for living a life of purpose. Rule 46 is, be good at your job. Sounds simple enough, but it's about more than just showing up and doing the bare minimum.
Right. It's about taking pride in your work, striving for excellence, being a reliable and valuable member of your team.
Constantly learning and growing.
Exactly. And then there's Rule 47, which takes a more philosophical turn. Check what history would say about you. Templar's asking us to think about our legacy, the impact we want to have on the world, the story we want to tell with our lives.
It's about making choices that you can be proud of, living a life that reflects your values.
So that when you look back, you can say, yeah, I made a difference. I lived a life of purpose.
And then, just when you think it's all about striving for greatness, he throws in Rule 48. Not everything can be green. It's a reminder that we can't solve every problem, that we can't be perfect all the time.
It's a reality check, isn't it? It's about finding that balance between idealism and pragmatism, We should strive to make a positive impact, but also recognize our limitations.
It's about doing the best we can without getting overwhelmed by the things we can't control.
And then he brings it all home with Rule 49, put something back. It's acknowledging that we've all benefited from this world, and it's our turn to give back.
To contribute to something bigger than ourselves.
Whether it's through volunteering, donating to charity, mentoring someone, or just being a kind and supportive presence in the lives of others.
And finally, Templar leaves us with a rule that encapsulates his whole philosophy. Rule 50, find a new rule every day. It's about never stopping learning and growing, being open to new ideas and perspectives.
It's about recognizing that life is a journey, and we should always be striving to learn and evolve.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Richard Templar's rules of life, we're left with one final question for you out there. If you could add one rule to this list, what would it be and why? We encourage you to keep thinking about these rules, see which ones resonate with you, and figure out how you can apply them to your own life. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.